Can we all agree that this was one of the best hours of television this year? I definitely think that it was. This was literally peak HBO. With Ellie saying right at the start of the episode, "I'm still me, he's still Joel, nothing will change that." As soon as it was spoken, it literally felt like devastation was on the horizon for Ellie, and she'd never lay eyes on him in the same way again. With the walls of Jackson being breached by the infected and us getting two polar opposite threats during this installment, which is an entire town being walked through and also a more personal, intimate threat of Abby finally coming face to face with the person that was responsible for killing her father, there was genuinely a battle on many fronts: the infected, Abby, and the harshness of the winter. This really felt like it was an episode that was reminiscent of the first episode of the entire series and the powerful nature that it had. So with that, let's dive into the episode and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 2, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Joel's death. This was a moment that it felt like many of us knew was on the horizon due to the story in the game, but I didn't expect it to be as emotional as it was. Joel was barely in this episode. In fact, he's barely been in this season, and I think that's what makes his death even more powerful. Pair that with the fact that the final few things that we ever saw him do was stick up for Ellie in front of Seth, make sure that she got home safe after the dance. He restrung her guitar for her and also let her stay in bed so she could rest that morning. They were all kind gestures which showed just how much he cared about her, that she was always front of mind for him, and it was that very care and the saving of her life 5 years prior to that day that ultimately resulted in him being killed in that moment. This episode did a phenomenal job and essentially made us think that Abby might potentially change her mind due to the softer approach that she had to start with. And by doing so, when she switched her personality on a dime when she got back to the lodge, it made her come across as somebody that had revenge running through her blood even more, and it made the slow approach in killing Joel feel even more sinister. Golf clubs, freaking golf clubs, to the point where one literally snapped. Joel was watching his home and loved ones burn in the distance, whilst right in front of him, his life was about to be taken. His final words, essentially being him telling Abby to just effing get on with it, was a moment that just felt quite badass, but when she was by the golf clubs, you just knew that she wouldn't get on with it quickly, and that she'd almost take pleasure in killing Joel as slow as she possibly could. During the beginning of this episode, we saw Abby in a dream where she was at the site where Joel committed the 19 murders when he rescued Ellie from the table, and we saw she was trying to convince herself to not go into the room that she actually did in reality. This dream was almost her trying to protect and save herself from the image of her father's brains all over the wall and floor. But because she did go in there, that was the image that haunted her mind of her father, and it was the very thing that gave her that motivation to kill Joel. I did always wonder why it was that Abby was so motivated to kill Joel when compared to the others, considering they also lost their fellow Fireflies. But with it being revealed that it was Abby's father that Joel killed, somebody that was unarmed, it did make sense why her thirst for revenge was so large. One thing that I thought was interesting about Joel's death was that even when confronted with the daughter of one of the people that he killed, he never apologized, not once. It showed the traits of the character and that he didn't regret his actions in the slightest, because he knew at that moment that if he didn't do that, then Ellie would have died. So he wasn't apologetic in the slightest. The only time where he pleaded with Abby throughout the entirety of that scene was when he said, "I saved your life," to which she said, "What life?" Something that highlighted that she took no joy in the life that she had. Her father was dead, the world was an apocalyptic state, and every day was just a fight to survive. A line of dialogue that felt so haunting in the episode was when Ellie asked the question on if the storm that was in front of Jackson was something that they should be worried about, and Jesse responded by saying, "Nah, it'll just be up in the mountains." However, the storm that actually occurred up in the mountains was the very thing that changed Ellie's life forever. When Ellie heard that Joel hadn't been in contact with the base in Jackson, herself and Jesse followed the tracks which led Ellie to the lodge in the mountains, and when she walked in, the hearing of the thuds and Abby's screams, but her not knowing exactly what it was, but it being the life of the person that she cared about most being taken, is something that just felt so sinister. I was gutted when she didn't get any of them when she walked in. Ellie pleading with Joel, crying in tears and telling him to get up as he laid there barely conscious, with most of the life beaten out of him, with just his finger twitching. But with him seeing her being restrained and him fighting with every fibre of his being and the little life that he had left to get up and protect her was not only true to the character, but it had me on the verge of tears. With Abby also then proceeding to pierce his neck with the golf club and kill him due to her being told to now end it. It was something that showed that she was still willing for it to continue because she wanted it to last, but it was just horrific to see because it was the end of Joel and it was done in the most torturous of ways. With Ellie screaming, "I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill all of you," it was a moment which showed that Abby was obviously now complete with the revenge that she wanted to get, but it showed that the cycle was just going to continue. And now, instead of Abby going after Joel because he killed her father, it was going to be Ellie going after Abby because her father figure was now taken by her. Abby bore witness to the state of her father after he was killed, and Ellie bore witness to the torturous nature of Joel's death and the image of his life being taken away right in front of her eyes. It was such an upsetting scene, and it's going to live long in the memory. Jackson versus the Infected. Now, this was what took the center stage of the episode for about the first 3/4 of it, the Infected launching an attack on Jackson. Jesse mentioned earlier on in the episode about how the Infected were now using their dead as some form of insulation from the cold weather, which again showed that they were gaining more intelligence. But I just felt like that was too important of a detail to get spoken in passing and not see happen on screen. And with Abby's desire to find Joel and falling into a pit of the dead Infected, we saw it almost being triggered like a trap, which caused all of the Infected to get awoken and for the ripple effect to be Jackson getting absolutely destroyed, meaning Abby was kind of responsible for many deaths that day. The town was on high alert due to the patrols that were done, but we saw the plan that Tommy mentioned in front of the town being carried out, with the residents either going into the basement to stay protected, or they were going on the roof so that they could fight. However, we saw that they were pretty overwhelmed, with many of the residents ending up being bitten and in turn being killed. There was a look that Tommy gave to Maria when they were in the midst of the battle that just pulled on my heartstrings, and we also saw Tommy lead the bloater away from Maria so that she wouldn't have to be face to face with one of the largest threats. Tommy versus the bloater was a scene that was so tense. Seeing the canister which he used for the flamethrower getting more and more depleted, as it didn't seem like the bloater was even getting that impacted by it, added so much tension. And I feel like we didn't even really know if he was going to end up being killed or not. But with the final press of the trigger being the last batch of fire that worked on it, we saw that Tommy ended up surviving. Just about. However, he's now going to be broken after seeing the state that Joel's body is probably going to be in. Death plagued this episode in many different ways, and you really felt the weight of all of the devastation when the episode concluded, on a large scale and also on a smaller, intimate scale. My review of the episode. I think this was comfortably one of the best episodes of television that we've had this year. It felt like peak HBO, and they're often the ones that produce some of TV's finest moments. This was a 56-minute episode, but it felt like it was so much longer, in a good way that is. I think it's because there was just so much that happened. I honestly didn't want it to end. The whole episode kind of felt like it was full of misdirection as well, so it amplified the final third even more. For example, we were first made to worry about a storm, then we were made to worry about Ellie and Jesse, then made to worry about a town, which we did need to be concerned about, and then, obviously, Joel appeared out of the blue, saved Abby, and then got killed. So we were made to worry about him too. It was just such a stressful time, but it captured how the showrunners truly wanted us to feel. The first scene with Abby was actually the perfect way to open the episode, because even though we didn't understand her motivation at the time, when it was revealed to us that it was her father that Joel killed and that was why she was filled with rage and revenge, it made total sense. There was a more personal connection with what she was doing, and it made the weight of her actions feel more believable for that environment. The sequence where we saw Abby landing on the pit of the dead Infected and seeing them all chasing after her, it really reminded me of the likes of World War Z. There were true elements of claustrophobia, especially behind the gate, and you really felt that desperation to escape and the desire to make it out of there that Abby had. The Infected were absolutely menacing. Shots such as seeing a lone Abby running away from an army of them was just so haunting to watch. This episode was one that was truly filled with emotion and pain, and the showrunners captured that in the best way possible. When Joel first got shot, it felt like the end was upon us for him, and it just hurt knowing that he was going to be killed. When Abby told him that she didn't get to tell him to speed it up, a pit just dropped in my stomach, because there was a part of me that thought that she wouldn't do it in the way that she mentioned in the first episode, but obviously she ultimately did. Having the town being destroyed and Joel also being killed just made the weight of the danger, devastation, and heartbreak hit even harder in this episode because there was truly no escaping it on any front, and there was no sense of joy when the episode finished at all. This was the best episode of TV that I've watched in such a long time, and it just made me so glad that the show's back. I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen next week, and I wonder if the cordyceps now being present in the pipes and the fact that Jackson has been destroyed is something that's going to make it uninhabitable. Pair that with the fact that Ellie wants to hunt and kill Abby, and I imagine Tommy's going to want to do the same too. I think we're in for a great next batch of episodes. So, there you have it, The Last of Us Season 2 Episode 2 Ending Explained. If you want to see every episode in The Last of Us Season 2 being broken down, then check below, there'll be a playlist there. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What did you think of this episode? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.